Okay, people, welcome back to this next tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to try to achieve an object looking something like the one I've got on my screen here. It's not exactly what I want it to be, but it's basically the 2x2 round that you did in the last tutorial, but it's tall, which means it's 3 times its normal flat height, and also it has the axle going through it, and it also has what we call fluting around the outside here, which is basically one V groove that is then patterned 54 times right around the outside. So the new technique here is the circular pattern, and also I'm going to show you how you can make some changes to the timeline to help you create certain objects. So to start this off, what I'll need you to do is to go find the 2x2 flat round and open it up. And once you've opened that up, then of course the usual thing, we save that as what you want to call it as the new one. So just wait for that. There we go. File, save as, and change this to 2x2. I'm going to call this tall round. Fluted. Okay, and click on save. Back to Fusion, make sure I've got it, tall round fluted. Okay, so the first thing that we'll do to this existing piece is that we need to make it taller. If you look down the timeline here, you can see here we started right back at the beginning with a 1x1 way back here. So if I went right back to that original extrusion and made it taller, then the whole thing then should become taller. So let's try that. So I've just clicked on that. There's the first sketch. There's the first extrusion. Select it, then right click. It's going to let me, come on, and edit feature. And the height, rather being 3.2, is going to be 3.2 times 3. So you can just type in asterisk 3 and then click OK. And the whole thing then has got taller. What you'll notice though is this kind of weird bit of mine on the bottom here. Yours may or may not do that. That's when I've cut the circular shape off later on. Now I've made this taller, the extrusion isn't quite long enough. So to get rid of this, I just need to go make the circular extrusion, which was the last thing that I did from last time I worked on this. So I just do this and go back one. That was the axle. This should be the extrusion. There it is there. So I can safely say that this extrusion here, that extrude 4, if I was to edit it, so select it once, come on, be nice, right click, edit feature, and you can see here we did that symmetrical extrusion above and below, but I just didn't make it long enough, so I'm just going to drag that down a bit further. So now it cuts the base right away. Like I said, yours may or may not do that depending on how long you made that original extrusion. Okay, I've got rid of that. I can see another sort of weird error with these large sections cut out here. So what I might do is also at this point get rid of that shell that was there. So select the shell, right click and delete. And now I've got myself a solid object. I'll bring the timeline forward, which will also then include the axle. And you can see that the axle hole is also not all the way through. So what I might do here is I might actually apply a shell, but I might wait until I've actually done the fluting around the outside first, just to see what happens. Okay, so just to get back to the one that's kind of already drawn, this fluting is basically just one triangle drawn here, extruded to make into a V cut, and then we just pattern that around in a circular pattern. So to do that, it's not hard. You just select the surface that you want to put the V cut profile onto, which in this case is this top surface here. Go to sketch and zoom right in just on this one corner here, or one point of tangency. And I'm going to make some executive decisions about how deep this V is. So just use the line tool, so L for line, snap to the outside of the line like so, 1, and let's make the depth of this V 0.5 millimeter, so 0.5, and hit enter. And then hit line again, and then I want you to draw 2 lines at 30 degrees to this line, and I want those lines to extend out here past the outside of the object. Just makes life easier. Now I don't know the length, but I do want the angle to be 30 degrees, so I can use my tab key on my keyboard, and you can see it then toggles between the length and the degrees, and change the degrees to 30, then hit your return button, and then do that again, so L for line, this time snapping to the corner, and once again hit the tab key, change the angle to 30. I really don't care how long this is at the moment. And then the last thing to do is we'll just close these 2 together. It really doesn't matter what that shape really is. Sorry, it doesn't matter how long these lines are, as long as this triangular profile protrudes past the outside of the object. I did muck around before trying to make it snap to it, and it just was too many problems. Alright, so I'm going to finish that sketch, and then I'm going to turn things side on, and then I'm going to use that sketch, all 3 of those profiles there, because it's not selecting one, and I'm just going to extrude it down. So better go and extrude first. 1, 2, 3, grab all 3, and then drag that down so it makes that V cut into the side of our tool piece there. Make sure it's on cut, and okay, let's have a look. Yes, that looks good, and you see that was the last extrusion. So now let's use a new technique called circular pattern to then repeat this around the outside. So if you select the last extrusion, which is the one that we want to pattern, then come up to create and scroll your way down to the pattern command. Now you've got a couple of options here: rectangular, circular, or even pattern along a path. Let's choose circular, and this dialog box pops up. First of all, it's saying, well, what do you want to pattern? Well, we've got features, bodies, faces, or components. Well, this extrusion is defined as a feature, which we've now selected. It's now asking me for the axis. So if you click into the axis collector, and then choose the circle that you want the axis of. So not this circle here, but this circle here, or this cylinder, the outside face. And then it defaults, it finds the center. You can see the little mark there in the center for a second. And it's done, just defaulted to 3 patterns. Well, obviously 3 is not enough. I did a bit of mucking around before, and it chose, I think, 54 from my argument state. All right, it's told me though there was too many there, so I'll just drop that back to say, sorry about that, people. My computer's mucked up. So back to this again. It told me just before that I had 54 patterns was too many, so I'm going to drop that back to say 48. And it hasn't come up with any error message, so 48 must be good as it's not going back over itself. Let's click OK, and as it does its thing, let's have a bit of a look to see whether it's made it even. So what I might just do is click on to my little viewer's not working, which is a worry. Okay, but it looks to me like it's okay. I can't see any large flat section, but if you ever do, there's a couple of things that you can muck around with that pattern tool. Just going to right click on it and edit definition to show what I mean. This here is really cool. Optimized, identical, and adjust. So if you leave it on adjust, it works out, it's going to do 48 patterns, and it's going to have exactly the same distance between every pattern. Optimized and identical, haven't played with those too many, but the adjust setting is really handy. These little ticks here do allow you to turn individual ones on and off if you wish to, those patterns. You may find a need for that sometime. And of course up here you can pattern not just by full, but you can go by angle and also symmetrical. Okay, so let's just click OK to that. And the last thing to do will be to probably extrude this all the way through, which I think was that extrusion there. There it is. So I'm just going to make that a little bit deeper to make sure it cuts all the way through. And then I'll show you something that doesn't really work, and then we'll show you how to solve it. I want to then shell this thing out, so typically you would then select the bottom surface, go to shell, and then type in your 1.45. And now it comes up with an error because it can't shell because this geometry is too tight. So you say to yourself, well, what am I going to do? Well, the solution to that is to actually do the shell before you actually do the fluting. So to do that, it's a little bit tricky, but what you can do with the timeline is just roll that back so the fluting is not done, even that single flute as well. So I'm going to go back another one. And if I do the shell now, it should have the desired effect of doing the shell and the flute should do afterwards. So shell 1.45, and you can see it's doing this middle weird thing as well. So what I might do there is cancel that shell and actually might go back, oops, and even do the shell before I extrude that axle. Yeah, so I'm going to do the shell there. You can see, so I'm inserting a shell at this point in the timeline. That's the main thing I wanted to really show you, I suppose. So select that bottom surface, select shell 1.45. We're inserting a shell back here. Click OK. And then if you then drag your timeline forward, hopefully everything will then also follow it. There's the extrusion, there's the sketch, there's the V groove, and last of all, hopefully there's the pattern. Hooray! Okay, so I think that will probably do for us for that tutorial, and have a go at that one.